Is being called a significant development in the Leigh Jennings murder case. Right now, authorities are preparing to hold a news conference on the Aurora woman who was found dead in her home on April 5th. 9 News reporter N.Ky is live with the breaking details as we await the announcement. Tom?
Well, Tanya, Aaron Nagengar, the Dearborn County prosecutor, and Brian Fields, the chief of police of Aurora, Indiana, have just stepped to the podium for their announcement about what they're going to do in the case of Leigh Jennings, who was murdered March 29th, body discovered early April. Let's go to the comments right now.
We are pleased to announce that today our office has filed charges of murder and robbery against Charles R. Stephenson of Kentucky as a result of the criminal investigation conducted by our law enforcement agencies. I would remind everyone that at this time these are merely allegations and he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. I would like to commend the Indiana State Police, the Aurora Police Department, the Dearborn County Sheriff's Department and the Special Crimes Unit, and the Rising Sun Police Department for their extensive and thorough investigation. And at this time, I turn it over to Chief of Police Brian Fields for his comments.
Thank you guys for coming. I would just like to say that without the hard work and dedication of all the agencies that Prosecutor Nagengar just mentioned, excuse me, this case probably would have gone unsolved. The Indiana State Police, the Aurora Police Department, and Dearborn County Sheriff's Department, they worked tirelessly to bring this case to a successful conclusion. I'm very proud and honored to have been a part of that and watch this take place. And with that, I'll take some questions.
Could you repeat the charges again for us first?
Murder and robbery.
I just want to ask about the pictures here. Are the murder weapons, right?
The evidence.
This affidavit, what was she killed with?
The evidence would suggest that, yes.
Tell us though, because nobody out there can see what's in here.
Appears to be a pepper grinder and a iron skillet.
And how severe were the injuries from these two items?
They appear to be very significant.
Like what?
Well, I can't really comment. That would have to be something that would come from the coroner's report, but significant enough, trauma enough that it caused her death.
It's in here though.
Yeah, you can take from that probable cause and draw your own conclusions from that.
Do we have a motive yet? Do we have any idea why this would have occurred?
Yes, to answer the other question is there were skull fractures. The injuries were significant. Her brain was damaged, in fact, as a result of those injuries. We provided the probable cause affidavit that's a matter of public record, showed photos of the very large skillet and a large pepper grinder. Would also indicate that probable cause affidavit indicates that Charles Stephenson's DNA was on the pepper grinder, and he could not be excluded as a mixture with Leigh Jennings on the handle of the skillet, both of which had large amounts of red matter, which is tested for positive for blood with regard to the skillet. And with regard to the motives, it was determined through the investigation that Mr. Stephenson needed to pay an aunt who he had borrowed money from $1,000 on Friday, March 30th. The investigation determined that he did not have that money on Wednesday, according to what he had told people. And Thursday night, he meets, the investigation revealed that he is at the residence of Leigh Jennings. He purchased Papa John's pizza and went to her house. And at that time, really is the last person to speak to Ms. Jennings. There's no evidence that she's alive beyond that date, and in fact the evidence suggests very strongly that that's the date in which she was killed. Early the next morning, he pays off an attorney representing his aunt the $1,000 that he did not have the day before. The evidence is that Ms. Jennings kept large amounts of cash in her safe, and that these items in the safe had cash. She was distrustful of banks, So she had cash. He knew she had cash in the safe because, as evidenced in the probable cause affidavit, he's borrowed money from her on 2 separate occasions, $3,000 on one time and $2,000 another, a statement which initially he denied to the police. And he borrowed the money, and so he knew she had money, he knew where she kept the money, and he then proceeded to, we believe, steal the money. We did find evidence. We had taken some swabs from some items that tested presumptively positive for blood, and had those analyzed, and it came back to the DNA of Leigh Jennings, suggesting that her blood was in the safe where the money was, we believe, where the money had been. And then he had $1,000 to pay early on March 30th. He believed he had to pay that to avoid going to jail. So that's a pretty significant motive. We then know he made purchases subsequent to that as a result of the investigation, so that's the motive.
How much money did he take from the safe in Miss Jennings' home?
We don't know.
The evidence tampering charge has been filed in Boone County in connection with the investigation. Indiana State Police, with the cooperation of the Boone County Sheriff's Office, they had the evidence tampering charge. The search warrant was served in Walton on his apartment. What is the tie there? What is the evidence tampering? What is he alleged to have done?
The evidence tampering was based on the fact that at the time our investigation had concluded he was the last person to see Leigh Jennings alive, and that he then went in Kentucky. He admitted he had cleaned his car, and we found evidence of cleaner in the car, and we believe there was blood evidence in his vehicle that he got rid of, and that's what the evidence tampering charge in Kentucky was based on, that investigation.
The drug trafficking charge, was that based on what they found in the course of those search warrant being served?
Yes.
Aaron, do you believe, or does your evidence suggest that he went there with a plan to kill her and get the money, or do you think something happened when he tried to get her to give him more money?
The evidence would suggest that he went there with the plan to get the money. He turned off his cell phone prior to going to the residence, which we found to be an unusual act for someone who uses his cell phone quite a bit. It would suggest that he knew that his whereabouts could be tracked, and so he turned off his cell phone.
My question was, do you think he went there with a plan to kill her if he had to get the money?
Yes. We believe that's what the evidence shows.
In Ohio, this would be a death penalty case, robbery committed during the commission of aggravated murder. Are you considering that?
Yes, this is a death penalty eligible case based on the fact that a robbery was committed in the course of committing the murder. We have not made a decision with regard to the death penalty yet. It requires, as everyone's well aware, that if you're going to make that decision, that there's a lot of thought and considerations to take into before making that decision. We've not made that decision yet, but that option's certainly on the table, as well as life without parole. Life without parole is also eligible based on those same aggravating factors, and we're considering that as well. At the time, he's charged with murder and robbery, which would result in a maximum sentence of 115 years. And we're confident if he got that sentence, that would ensure that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars.
He is
What makes
in
you guys
custody right
certain
now.
that he didn't just borrow the money from her and end up with the money that way, and then somebody else killed her?
Because he told us he got the money from someone else, and that person said he never got any money from me. The probable cause affidavit, he had said he got the $1,000 from a John Rittenauer. John Rittenauer was contacted and interviewed, and John Rittenauer said, I haven't even been in the area in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and I certainly didn't lend him any money.
He's in custody right now in Boone County. What's the process then for extradition? Let the charges go from there. What's the process going forward?
Well, Boone County Commonwealth's attorney's also been extremely helpful during our investigation. I would like to thank them as well. Them and the Sheriff's Department down there has been extremely helpful. But I would indicate that they have an independent drug dealing charge, and I think they're also looking at other possibilities. At this point, he's being held on their bond. If they were to dismiss their case, or if that case were to get resolved, then he would be brought over here for extradition.
If anything you guys learned, can you tell us if it would have related at all to the Bill and Peggy Stephenson murder case?
Our investigation is completely unrelated to that case in Kentucky, other than the fact that Mr. Stephenson is related to those victims.
I want to ask Chief Fields something. This is the kind of thing that doesn't happen in Aurora, and I know you have detectives that are working beyond their normal hours to help with this case, and we had talked about how they take it so personally. So this is an important day, not just for the family, but for the people of Aurora and your police department. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this certainly had our community abuzz, for lack of better terms. As I mentioned to you on Monday, we certainly took this to heart, and we took this personally. We committed a lot of resources. I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but we really spared no expense, nor would we have. It was very important to us to hold this person responsible for this crime, and it was a horrible crime, and we're not used to this type of thing in Aurora. And I can tell you this, after watching this investigation, I would not want to be someone that had the group of detectives after me that I seen. I would not want that group after me. They were tenacious, they were nonstop, and just the drive that I seen in them, I would not want to have been that individual that did this crime. So to see that drive and to see how concerned they were to bring this person to justice was very impressive. And I hope it never happens to another family, not in Aurora, not in Lawrenceburg, Greendale, or any other community. But I know that if it does happen again, I know that we're going to get the same response, and I'm very pleased with that, and I'm very proud of that. So for as horrible of a crime as it was, I'm pleased to know that we're more than capable of handling this in the future.
Is there any indication that there was anybody else involved at any level?
No.
During or after?
No, the evidence in this case is pretty compelling, and it leads to one person, and the person that it leads to is in custody at this time.
Aaron, the brutal nature of this crime, would you comment on this? You've seen a lot of cases over time. Again, murder cases are rare in Dearborn County, but the brutal nature of this, a skillet, a pepper grinder, skull fractures.
Yes, it was a very violent death, and it's very unfortunate and tragic for Ms. Jennings and her family.
Have you contacted the family? If so, what have they said so far, knowing that these charges have been filed?
We've remained in contact with the family, and the family's been very supportive of our efforts and very cooperative as far as whatever we needed from them. And you know, our hearts go out to them, because this should not have happened. And Mr. You know, the evidence is just compelling that Mr. Stephenson committed this horrible crime. But I would remind everyone, we provide you a probable cause affidavit and allegations, but he is still innocent until proven guilty, and we still have to make our case to a jury before he is considered guilty.
Where was his DNA found again, please?
His DNA was found on the pepper grinder in an area.
Finger, skin, or?
We swabbed an area that we believe had been touched by a finger. There was a substance. In fact, it was a fingerprint. We thought there wasn't enough. The fingerprint was inconclusive, so we swabbed that area, and that area tested positive for him. It's a mixture, but he's the major profile in that mixture. And I mean, to a degree of reasonable medical scientific certainty, so that's a pretty high standard. So his DNA is on the pepper grinder, and then there's a mixture of his DNA, or a mixture of Leigh Jennings' DNA, and his DNA cannot be excluded. His profile cannot be excluded on the skillet. And that's also a pretty high threshold of evidence, because as you may or may not know, it's very easy to exclude someone. If it says they cannot be excluded, there's significant evidence that his DNA is on that skillet as well.
And the IOU, he left that behind? He did not take the
He
IOU?
did not take the IOUs. They were found in the safe. And then Detective Rolfing with the state police and Detective Tressler with the state police questioned him about that. He initially said he didn't have a relationship, business relationship with her, then said, oh yeah, I did borrow the $3,000, and then he said, so you didn't borrow any other money, and then he said absolutely not, and then they showed him the other promissory note, and he said, oh yeah, I did borrow that money, and so that's concerning that he wasn't forthcoming with the police during the investigation.
Has he been otherwise cooperative, or has he been, how would you characterize your dealings with him?
I don't think I can comment on whether he exercised his constitutional rights or not.
How did Charles come to know Leigh Jennings?
She had met him through his work, her work at the barber shop. The investigation revealed she worked at Young's Barber Shop. I believe most of you are aware of that, but she worked at Young's Barber Shop in Kentucky. He was a client of that establishment, and that's how he met her.
This is a pretty elaborate, I mean, it sounds like a plan to be together, have some pizza, and kill you and get your money so I can pay off my bills. I mean, we're talking about a plan to kill.
That's correct. The evidence was very clear that he had a very serious financial situation and desperately needed that money that Friday. He believed he needed that money Friday or he was going to jail. And he didn't have the money on Wednesday.
Why not just steal the money? You know, I'm just saying. He knows where it is, he knows the safe, he knows
You'd have to ask him why.
It's very senseless.
It's
Steal the
very
money.
cold, it's just so cold.
Is there any sign that a struggle was put up by Leigh or a fight?
There's a significant amount of blood spatter. It appears that she was she was lower than him when this blood spatter occurred, so it would suggest it was just, again, a violent death.
Would he have gone to jail had he not paid that $1,000?
I don't believe so. I don't know for certain.
You've been watching a news conference, the Dearborn County prosecutor there. This is regarding Leigh Jennings' murder. This is a murder case we've been following for some time. The prosecutor announcing today that he is charging Charles Robert Stephenson in this case. This was a very compelling news press conference for many reasons, one of which is that they basically laid out much, if not all, of their case against the man who they've charged, Charles Robert Stephenson, in this case. They say his DNA was found on the murder weapons, which they told us are a pepper grinder and an iron skillet. They say that Stephenson owed a lot of money, $1,000 to someone, was desperate to get money, and knew that Jennings kept money in her home. So he went there with the intent to kill her to get that money. The case could be eligible for the death penalty, but they have not decided if they will seek it or not.